There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Ryan MacInnis. He is the Director of Marketing at Voysis. Ryan, how are you doing today, man?
I'm well, James. How are you?
I am fantastic. So, Ryan, we're going to be talking about voice today. This is obviously a space that I'm very passionate about with, us being in the business that we're in, of producing podcasts. And I ran across a video that you were in with Dave Gearhart over at Drift. Reached out, saw what you guys were doing. Love what you guys are doing. Tell our listeners a little bit about Voysis and what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, sure. So thanks again for having me. Super excited to be here. But Voysis is a voice AI platform. Think of Alexa or Google, but we make it really easy for companies to spin up their own native voice experiences for their brand very quickly and not have to rely on a third party, like, a really expensive integration like Nuance or Watson, or something that's kind of a high level assistant that they can integrate with today, which would be Alexa or Google Home. We give them a really easy way for them to own that experience on their own digital properties, so they have the ability to have a deeper connection with their customers than they already do.
I love it. So to kind of back up a bit, I want to get started with why you think voice is so fundamental for how things are going to be. You mentioned, as we were talking about offline, just the importance of leveraging voice to deepen customer relationships. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think that we wouldn't be here talking about the impact of voice if it wasn't, in my opinion, for Amazon. I think Amazon did an amazing job. Now, Siri was great before that, but Amazon really enabled us to see a world in which we would speak to something physical, something that we would say, hey, so-and-so, or we would have that intimate conversation with a device or an AI. So the reason why I'm super bullish on voice is because of the ways that it can improve your life and give you a ton of time back in terms of productivity and efficiency, but also help you find what you're looking for a lot faster and get the answers you need to basically carry on living your life in a much more succinct way. And so what we believe at Voysis is that this is going to be just as impactful as the introduction of the smartphone.
Wow.
You're introducing in a totally new way of interacting with content.
Yeah.
And it's going to have, in my opinion, the same impact as that.
And so what does that mean from when we think about relationships with our customers, if we want to have a deeper relationship with our customers, but we're having them chat to or talk to a bot, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that we've actually found when we launched the company, we thought the folks that would focus mostly on voice technology would be in the technical space, where we're actually surprised to learn that a lot of people driving voice decisions in these big companies are actually those in marketing or digital roles. And the reason for that is because they believe that voice is just as important as a form of brand identity as having a mobile app or some sort of omni-channel presence. And so in terms of being where your customers are, I think as marketers, that's what we strive for, right? We want to find where the attention is. If that's in a brick and mortar store where people are going to shop, or if it's on an Alexa device, you've always seen people kind of gravitate towards where is everybody consuming content today. And I think that voice gives a lot of brands today, specifically because of the fact that not many companies are doing it, gives them the upper hand to establish one more mode of interaction with customers to have them stand out. Because there are numbers that are out there today where the next generation of shoppers, call them Gen Z, whatever you have that being referred to as, are the most, I wouldn't say wishy-washy, but they tend to not be as loyal to brands if they don't have what they're looking for. The experience, whether browsing or just interacting with somebody in a store, isn't as great as they hoped. So voice gives those marketers and those companies an additional way to stand out and really help enhance that relationship to make sure that they have longer lasting impacts on those folks.
I love it. I love it. So I want to, we've got a couple different types of folks listening. Ryan, we've got the B2B marketers that are listening to this, that are VPs of marketing, CMOs, but then we've got some agency folks as well, some agency CEOs, some agency marketers thinking about how they can leverage technology to serve their clients, and a lot of their clients are in the B2C space. I want to talk about some specific B2B use cases and how you see voice really shaping B2B interactions. But then I also want to hear some B2C use cases that the agency folks listening to this can hear and go, man, I can really start to advise our B2C clients with, getting them thinking about ideas like this. So let's start with some really practical B2B use cases and then transition over into the B2C ones.
Sure. So I think one of the hottest B2B use cases is customer support. I think that if you look at where a lot of voice technologies are solving for today, that tends to be the lower of the hanging fruit. It's very expensive to have people man the phones and really keep up with live chat. And while people have kind of used AI in a way to be smarter about how they interact with somebody when they have a question, I think that voice will have the biggest impact on B2B software in that sense, or those companies through those interactions.
Got it.
As you start to kind of go much more broadly, you talk about marketing and sales tools. And as we were talking about earlier, being able to go to Salesforce after you've had, Salesforce potentially record a phone conversation you've had, and then you'd be able to ask with your voice for notes about, hey, what was the last time I talked to this prospect, or what kind of stage in the buying cycle were they at, or any notes I should be aware of before I go to this call, or even who's working this deal because I have some information that I want to share with them. It's surfacing that information. So in a B2B sense, as a marketer, that's what gets me really excited, is kind of understanding our funnel a little bit better and asking relevant questions as it relates to how people are using the product. But then as you go much more broadly with B2C, that's where I think the fun part happens, because the B2C space is where, I used to be a sports journalist, so it's where the stories are, where you really get to see somebody who comes to the Nike site go and say, I'm looking for men's running shoes in size 12 under $200, and be able to have that sort of very conversational, intimate conversation with Nike or an apparel brand, to have them find what they're looking for a lot faster, but then start to say, I have basketball tryouts on Monday and my mom's buying me a pair of shoes, but she says I can't spend more than $150. What do you recommend for youth, boys in size 9, things like that. So as a marketer, what gets me fired up about it is that you get to have one more layer of intimacy with the customer, but you actually get to know a lot more about them. On the back end, you get to understand kind of what sorts of things they're asking for and who they are, and that's all tied to like a user ID or a profile, and you get to start to build out those personas in a very different way than you do today. But I think that obviously the biggest use case, as we mentioned Amazon earlier, is retail and e-commerce. But we've started to see a lot of interest from obviously music streaming services, those kinds of companies, because asking for scrolling through an app to change the song while you're mid-run is really ideal. And then obviously, when you start to think about news and publishing for companies that produce hundreds of articles a month and all this content, and you really only care about a particular author or a writer who writes for a particular thing, or only tech news or whatnot, how do you quickly navigate through those lands? I think that's what you're going to see in terms of the evolution of those different spaces.
I love it. Ryan, this has been incredibly eye-opening for me. What are some of the, as you guys are talking to customers, you're advocating for voice, what are some of the common questions that you're hearing from people? Maybe it's skepticism, maybe it's just excitement about opportunity, but what are some of the things that you're hearing as you're talking to customers and potential customers?
Yeah, totally. I think everybody is excited about voice, but voice is like that dish that one of your family members makes, that it's like their first time making it, and they have really good intentions, and it will probably be good, but no one's tried it before.
Yeah.
That's how I compare voice today, because of the fact that no one in the market aside from Amazon has really embedded it natively into their digital properties. Everyone's kind of either going with the speaker or, similar to what Comcast did with the X1 Xfinity remote, kind of building into more of the hardware side of things. So I think a lot of people have the hesitancy of saying, well, is this going to be like the Apple Watch, where if I build an app on top of this, people won't buy it or the interaction won't be there. So a lot of it is actually education. And it's talking about, why this mode of interaction is so important and how it's 3 times faster than texting, and why over 50% of retailers are actually investing in it today, as that was up from about 1% earlier this year. So as you can see, this huge explosion of interest has been predominantly driven by Amazon, but also specifically in retail and e-commerce, brands realizing that they need a different avenue. If you don't want to partner with Amazon or one of these, big 3 companies who are leading the voice assistant space right now, you need a voice yourself.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we're coming up against is the educational layer of things. But as a marketer, that's the fun part. You get to basically introduce someone to that dessert or dish that you've created for them, but at the same time be able to help guide them through what their digital strategy is ultimately. Because I think at any point when you're selling B2B SaaS software, or if you're trying to get somebody to believe in your vision, it's important for you to put their perspective first and their interest first, and say, who are you as a brand? What are your goals? How does voice fit in? Rather than saying, you need to do voice and we're going to shove this new technology down your throat. It's very much a collaborative thing we're seeing so far. So that's where we're spending a lot of time trying to better understand their side of it.
So do you see, like, Ryan, this may be an ignorant question, but do you see brands using voice through their mobile apps, through their mobile websites? Where does that interaction live? I would imagine it would feel kind of weird being in a desktop environment, but I could be wrong there. What's that look like?
Yeah, it's usually, the way we believe it is, it would accompany a multimodal experience, so somewhere with the screen.
Okay.
And so the reason why the devices are really good for what's the weather. I'm looking to order rapid fire groceries that have been what I've historically had ordered in the past. That's all great, but when you're trying to really browse something or do multitask of a bunch of different things, you need that accompanied screen. So we think that a lot of brands today will use this engagement on mobile web and mobile apps. And the reason why mobile is so important for voice is because searching for something on a mobile device today is one of the most strenuous processes that you could go through. It's very hard for you to go to an apparel site or even find something via customer support on such a small screen with really poor filtering options, with the load times as they are for each step along the way. And you have, with voice, one way for you to rattle off all of the things that you're most interested in, and for that to be taken care of on the back end for you. And so that's why we think that implementing it on mobile has the biggest impact, because there hasn't really been a sweeping way for mobile experiences to be improved until now.
Got it. I love it. Ryan, well, this has been, again, very, very informative for me. I think our listeners are going to get a ton of value out of this. I want to close with one last question to really help our listeners just get to know you better on another level. What would you say, Ryan, is the legacy that you want to leave?
Yeah, so it's funny, when you initially asked me, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be a great way for me to get all of the things I want to get out of this life on one podcast. But I think what it comes down to at the end of the day is, like most people, I want to make an impact. So the legacy that I want to leave behind is much more than working at a company that gives the world a new way to interact with things, and for us to feel that this was the first of many, that we were basically the iPhone for voice, and kind of set the precedent of how people would interact with things in the future. But I think much more broadly than that, I think I have a deep sense of community. I'm from a city just north of Boston, and I feel really passionately about going back to that community in the future and being able to take everything that I've learned and kind of facilitate an environment where everybody has the opportunity to be exposed to companies like Voysis and work in worlds that have equal impact on our lives. And I think that is the legacy I want to leave behind, to be able to have the ability to have been successful in this, but then ultimately be a person who's contributed to kind of the welfare of that expansion kind of moving forward.
I love it. Awesome, Ryan. If somebody listening to this, they want to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about Voysis, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Sure. So you can, I'm on Twitter. It's at RKMac. I worked at Twitter for a little while, so I got the benefit of the shorter handle.
Nice.
It's RKMAC. And then LinkedIn, you can find me. I'm happy to connect with anybody and continue the conversation there. And then you can go to Voysis, VOYSIS.com to learn more about what we do.
Love it. Awesome, Ryan. Thank you so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you'd like to connect with B2B executives from all over the world, make sure to join our private Facebook community. There are some incredible conversations happening inside this group. To join, visit b2bgrowthshow.com/FB.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.